Hashtag a blind bride walked into the saloon alone, and the richest man followed her voice out. The saloon door creaked open, letting in a slice of harsh afternoon light. The piano player missed a note. Conversations died. In the doorway stood a woman in a pale blue dress, her hand gripping a wooden cane. Clara Winters, 22 years old, blind since birth. She took a hesitant step forward, her free hand outstretched, feeling for obstacles. The floorboards announced each careful step with a groan. The smell hit her first: whiskey, sweat, tobacco smoke, and something else. Fear, maybe. Thomas. Her voice trembled slightly. Thomas, are you here? No one answered. 30 pairs of eyes watched her. Men with weathered faces and calloused hands. Women with painted lips and tired eyes. And in the corner, at a table alone, Jacob Blackwood, the railroad man, owner of half the county and most of its debts. Clara took another step, cane tapping against a chair leg. I'm looking for my husband, Thomas Winters. Someone snickered. A glass clinked against wood. The bartender wiped his hands on a dirty rag and looked away. Ma'am, a voice finally said. Don't think your husband's here. Clara's shoulders straightened. He said he'd be at the saloon. Business meeting, he called it. Jacob Blackwood watched from his corner, whiskey untouched. His eyes never left her face. The town of Mercy had sprouted from dust when the railroad came through 5 years back. 2 streets, a church, 3 saloons, and a cemetery that grew faster than the crops. The land was unforgiving, but the people more so. Folks came with dreams and left with nothing, or stayed and turned hard as the ground beneath their feet. Clara hadn't been born here. Thomas had brought her 3 months ago, a new bride from back east. Her family had money once, before her father's investments soured. Thomas had offered security, respectability, a fresh start in a new town where her blindness might not define her. The morning had started like any other. Clara woke to an empty bed, Thomas already gone. She'd found the note on the kitchen table, left for Mrs. Peterson to read to her when she came to help with the housework. Business at the Diamond Saloon. Home for supper. Tea. Mrs. Peterson had tutted. That's no place for your husband to be conducting business, Mrs. Winters. Clara had nodded, thanked her, and sent her home early. Then she'd changed into her blue dress. The one Thomas said brought out her eyes, a compliment that always made her smile at the irony. She'd pinned up her honey-brown hair, found her cane, and stepped out into the world she navigated by sound, smell, and memory. 16 careful blocks, counting each intersection, following the boardwalk's edge with her cane, ignoring the whispers that followed her. The blind woman, the banker's wife, out alone. Now she stood in the Diamond Saloon, the air thick with silence and judgment. Maybe try Henderson's down the street, someone offered. Clara shook her head. The note said the Diamond. Are you certain he's not here? Jacob Blackwood finally spoke, his voice deep and measured. Your husband hasn't been here today, Mrs. Winters. She turned toward his voice, her unseeing eyes somehow finding him across the room. You know who I am. Everyone knows Thomas Winters' wife. He stood, chair scraping against the floor. The room watched as he crossed to her, boots striking the boards with purpose. Allow me to introduce myself. Jacob Blackwood. Clara didn't extend her hand. The railroad man, among other things. He stood before her now, close enough that she could smell expensive cologne beneath the whiskey on his breath. May I escort you home, Mrs. Winters? These streets can be treacherous. I found my way here. So you did. Something like admiration colored his voice. Impressive. Clara's chin lifted slightly. I don't need pity, Mr. Blackwood. I don't offer it. He moved beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. Just a neighbor's courtesy. Behind them, the saloon had begun to breathe again. The piano player returned to his keys. Conversations resumed, though quieter now, I still darting toward the odd pair. My husband, Clara began. Isn't here, Jacob finished. And won't be pleased to find you looking for him in a place like this. Clara's fingers tightened around her cane. Then perhaps you could tell me where I might find him? Jacob was silent for a moment. I believe your husband frequents the Gilded Lily on the north side of town. The name hung in the air between them. Clara knew what the Gilded Lily was. Everyone did. Not just a saloon, but a brothel. The finest in Mercy, they said. I see, she said, though of course she didn't. Not with her eyes. Jacob offered his arm then, and after a moment's hesitation, Clara placed her hand upon it. Together they walked out of the Diamond Saloon, leaving whispers in their wake. The afternoon sun beat down on them as they emerged. Clara felt its warmth on her face, a contrast to the cold knowledge settling in her chest. Would you like me to take you home, Mrs. Winters? Jacob asked. Clara stood still, considering. 3 months of marriage. 3 months in a strange town, in a house that never quite felt like hers. 3 months of Thomas's increasingly frequent absences. No, she said finally. I think I'd like to sit in the park a while. I can find my way home from there. Jacob nodded, then remembered she couldn't see it. As you wish. They walked in silence to the small square that passed for a park in Mercy. A few scraggly trees provided meager shade. Jacob led her to a bench. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Clara sat, folding her cane across her lap. He remained standing. Mrs. Winters, Clara, your husband's business is his own, but he's not conducting it where he claimed to be. Her voice was steady now. You needn't spare my feelings, Mr. Blackwood. I'm blind, not stupid. A faint smile touched his lips. No, you certainly aren't that. 3 days later, Clara received another note. This one came by messenger, a young boy who pressed it into Mrs. Peterson's hands and ran off before she could question him. It's not your husband's writing, Mrs. Peterson said, squinting at the paper. It says, Mrs. Winters, I would be honored if you would join me for tea tomorrow at 2 o'clock. My home is the White House on Hill Street. A driver will collect you if agreeable. Respectfully, J. Blackwood. Clara sat very still, her fingers tracing the edge of her teacup. Read it again, please. Mrs. Peterson did, her disapproval evident in every syllable. When she finished, she folded the note sharply. You won't be accepting, of course. Clara took a sip of tea. Why wouldn't I? Mrs. Winters. A married woman, alone with Jacob Blackwood? The man has a reputation. What sort of reputation? Mrs. Peterson lowered her voice. He's never married. Lives alone in that big house. They say he's cold as ice in business. Ruined plenty of men. And the women he keeps company with, well, they're not respectable. Like the women at the Gilded Lily? Clara asked quietly. Mrs. Peterson gasped. Who told you about such a place? Clara set down her cup. Please inform Mr. Blackwood's driver that I accept his invitation. The next day, Clara wore her green dress, the silk smooth under her fingers. She pinned her hair up, dabbed rose water at her wrists and throat, and waited by the door until she heard the carriage approach. Jacob's home sat on the highest point in Mercy, overlooking the town he largely owned. The driver helped Clara from the carriage, led her up stone steps, and announced her arrival to a butler who guided her through the house. She counted her steps, noting the change from marble entryway to plush carpet. The air smelled of beeswax and leather-bound books. No dust. No lingering cooking odors. A house maintained by servants, not a home. Mrs. Winters, Jacob's voice came from ahead. Welcome. The butler departed, his footsteps fading. Clara stood, cane in hand, facing the direction of Jacob's voice. Your home is very quiet, Mr. Blackwood. Jacob, please. She heard him move closer. And yes, too quiet most days. This way to the garden, if you'll allow me. He didn't touch her, but described their path as they walked. 3 steps down. A slight turn to the right. Double doors opening to the garden. Clara appreciated his guidance without coddling. The garden air carried the scent of roses and freshly cut grass. Birds called from nearby trees. They settled at a table where tea was already laid out. Sugar, he asked. 1 spoon. No milk. He prepared her cup and guided her hand to it. Their fingers brushed briefly. Why did you invite me here, Jacob? He took his time answering. I've watched you these past months. Walking the town alone. Learning your way. Your courage is remarkable. Necessity, not courage. Perhaps. But there's something else. His cup clinked against its saucer. You don't belong in Mercy. Clara sipped her tea. Neither do you, I suspect. He laughed, a sound with little humor. True enough. I came for the railroad. Stayed for the power. But you, why are you here, Clara? I married Thomas. That's not an answer. Clara set down her cup. My family lost everything. I had few prospects. Thomas offered security. And love. She turned her face toward the warmth of the sun. Love is a luxury, Mr. Blackwood. Jacob. Jacob. She smiled faintly. What about you? Why no wife to share this grand house? The same reason, perhaps. Love is a luxury my kind of business doesn't afford. They sat in comfortable silence, the garden around them humming with afternoon life. Clara felt a strange peace here, away from the suffocating quiet of her own home. Your husband, Jacob finally said, is not a good man. Clara's hand stilled in her lap. That's a serious accusation. He's embezzling from the bank. Small amounts. Clever enough to hide it for now. But it will catch up to him. How do you know this? I own the bank, Clara. Or most of it. Your husband works for me, though he may not realize how closely I watch my investments. Clara absorbed this, her face betraying nothing. Why tell me? Because when it comes to light, he'll run. And I doubt he plans to take you with him. The words struck like physical blows. Yet some part of her had known. The late nights. The vague explanations. The growing coldness. What do you want from me? She asked. Jacob leaned forward. She could feel his gaze on her face. Nothing you're not willing to give. But I'm offering you a choice before choices are taken from you. What choice? Protection. Security. A life here, under my care. Clara stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. You think because I'm blind, I need a new keeper? Trading one man's control for another's? No. His voice remained calm. I think you're the strongest person in this miserable town. I'm offering partnership, not ownership. Partnership. She nearly laughed. What could I possibly offer Jacob Blackwood, the man who owns everything? He stood too, his voice closer now. Something I've never had. Something real in a life built on calculations and ledgers. Clara shook her head. You don't know me. I know enough. His hand reached out, hovering near her face but not touching. Think about it. That's all I ask. The carriage returned her home before Thomas was due back. Clara sat in her parlor, turning Jacob's words over in her mind. Protection. Security. Partnership. Offers that sounded too much like what Thomas had promised. When Thomas came home that night, she smelled unfamiliar perfume on his collar when he bent to kiss her cheek. How was your day, dear? He asked, the question of formality. Clara smiled. Educational. And yours? Productive at the bank? Very. He poured himself a whiskey. The Hendersons have invited us for dinner Friday. I've accepted. Of course. She listened to the ice clink in his glass. Thomas, are we in financial trouble? The silence stretched a beat too long. What would make you ask such a thing? You work late so often. You seem preoccupied. He laughed, the sound forced. Banking is demanding work. Nothing for you to worry about. Clara nodded, letting him believe she was satisfied. That night, after Thomas fell asleep, she lay awake, making calculations of her own. The next morning, she waited until Thomas left, then asked Mrs. Peterson to help her dress for an outing. Where are you going today? The housekeeper asked. The bank, Clara replied. I'd like to make a withdrawal from my personal account. Mrs. Peterson helped her into her coat. Shall I accompany you? No, thank you. I know the way. The bank was 6 blocks from their home. Clara walked confidently, counting intersections, nodding to those who greeted her. Inside, the marble floor echoed under her cane. Mrs. Winters, the teller, greeted her. How may I help you? I'd like to close my account. A pause. All of it, ma'am? Yes. In cash, please. More hesitation. That's quite a sum. Perhaps you'd prefer a banker's draft? Cash, Clara repeated firmly. It's my money, is it not? Of course, ma'am. One moment while I speak with the manager. Clara waited, back straight, cane planted before her. She heard whispers, a door opening and closing. Finally, footsteps approached. Mrs. Winters. A new voice, the manager. This is most irregular. Perhaps if you discuss with your husband. My inheritance is held in my name, Mr. Phillips. I don't require my husband's permission to access it. Of course, but the full amount. Now, please. 20 minutes later, Clara left the bank with a heavy bag and a lighter heart. She made one more stop before returning home, the telegraph office, where she sent a message to her cousin in Boston. That evening, Thomas came home in a state. He burst through the door, calling her name. What have you done? He demanded, finding her in the parlor. Clara set aside her book. You'll need to be more specific, Thomas. Don't play games. He paced before her. Phillips says you withdrew everything. Every cent. My inheritance, yes. His voice lowered dangerously. Where is it? Safe. It's not safe unless it's in the bank. My bank. Clara smiled thinly. Strange. I thought it was Jacob Blackwood's bank. Thomas went still. What did you say? You heard me. She stood, finding her cane. I know about the embezzlement, Thomas. I know about the gilded lily. I know you married me for my inheritance, not for love. Who's been filling your head with lies? His voice shook with rage or fear. Clara couldn't tell which. Does it matter? The money is gone. I've sent most of it to my cousin in Boston. The rest? She patted her pocket where a key now resided. Let's call it insurance. Thomas grabbed her arms, fingers digging in. You stupid woman. Do you have any idea what you've done? What I owe? Clara didn't flinch. I imagine quite a lot, given your habits. Gambling debts? Or just the cost of maintaining your other women? His grip tightened. You're my wife. What's yours is mine. Not anymore. She pulled free. I'm leaving you, Thomas. The papers are being drawn up as we speak. He laughed bitterly. No court will grant a divorce. And no one will believe a blind woman over a respected banker. Perhaps not. Clara moved toward the door. But Jacob Blackwood might be persuasive, especially when he presents evidence of your theft. Thomas lunged for her, but Clara was already moving, her cane sweeping in an arc that caught him behind the knees. He crashed into a side table, sending a lamp shattering to the floor. Don't follow me, she said quietly. It's over. She left him there, amid the broken glass. Outside, a carriage waited, Jacob's driver, sent at her request earlier that day. The Diamond Saloon, she instructed as he helped her in. The saloon fell silent again when she entered, just as it had days before. But this time, Clara moved with certainty, her cane finding a clear path to the back corner where Jacob sat alone. You came, he said, surprise evident in his voice. Clara took the seat opposite him. You were right. About Thomas. About everything. Jacob signaled for a drink. What happened? She told him. The bank, the confrontation, her escape. When she finished, Jacob was silent for a long moment. Stay with me, he finally said. Not as a kept woman. Not as a charity case. As my partner. Clara shook her head. I'm leaving Mercy. Going to Boston to start over. I see. His disappointment was palpable. But first, she continued, I need your help with something. 2 nights later, Thomas Winters was arrested trying to board the eastbound train. In his possession, forged bank drafts and a ticket to New York. The evidence Jacob provided ensured he would spend years in prison. Clara didn't attend the arrest. She was at the Diamond Saloon, sitting across from Jacob one last time. Your train leaves tomorrow, he said. Yes. She reached across the table, finding his hand. Come with me. Jacob's fingers tightened around hers. What? You said it yourself. You don't belong here either. There's nothing for you in Mercy but power over people you don't respect. I have responsibilities. Businesses. You have wealth enough to walk away. Clara leaned forward. What's keeping you here, Jacob? Really? He had no answer. I'm offering you what you offered me, she continued. A choice. Partnership. Something real. Around them, the saloon hummed with life, piano music, laughter, the clink of glasses. A world Jacob had observed but never truly joined. I don't know how to be anything but what I am, he admitted. A businessman. A collector of debts and properties. Clara smiled. And I don't know how to be anything but blind. We learn. We adapt. Dawn broke over Mercy, painting the dusty streets gold. Clara stood outside the train station, her small bag at her feet. The eastbound train hissed and steamed on the tracks, preparing for departure. She heard footsteps approaching, familiar ones. Confident strides, expensive boots. You came, she said, echoing his words from the saloon. I had to see if you were serious. Jacob stopped before her. About leaving. About me. Clara held out her hand. There's nothing for either of us here. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then his hand took hers, warm and solid. I've never followed anyone before, he said quietly. Clara smiled. And I've never led. Perhaps we'll find our way together. The train whistle blew. Around them, passengers hurried to board. Jacob picked up Clara's bag, then offered his arm. Boston, then? He asked. For now. She took his arm. After that, we'll see. They boarded the train, leaving behind the dust and broken promises of Mercy. As the town receded into the distance, Clara felt Jacob watching her. What is it? She asked. I'm trying to understand what you see in me, he admitted. A man like me. Clara reached up, her fingers finding his face, tracing its contours gently. I don't see with my eyes, Jacob. I never have. The train gathered speed, carrying them east toward an uncertain future. Behind them, Mercy grew smaller, its saloons and secrets fading into the landscape. Ahead lay Boston, and beyond that, a world neither of them had dared imagine. Clara rested her head against Jacob's shoulder, feeling the rhythm of the train beneath them. For the first time in years, she felt not just safe, but free. Not defined by her blindness or another's perception, but by choices made and paths taken. Jacob's arm encircled her shoulders, his touch tentative at first, then sure. 2 outcasts, finding in each other what the world had denied them, not pity or protection, but understanding, partnership, and perhaps, in time, love. The Diamond Saloon would find new patrons. The bank would recover from Thomas's theft. Mercy would continue, harsh and unforgiving as ever. But Clara and Jacob had followed a different voice, one that promised not wealth or security, but the richer possibility of a life fully lived, eyes open or closed. The train rounded a bend, and Mercy disappeared from view completely. Neither of them looked back. Total _char_count, 25,679.